Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Associate Professor Georgina Drew. Dr. Drew is based in the School of Social Science at the University of Adelaide, where she teaches and researches in Anthropology and Development Studies. She holds a PhD from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and brings a truly global perspective to her work, having conducted research across Asia, Latin America, Australia, and also the United States. Her scholarship sits at the intersection of environmental anthropology and development, with a particular focus on the cultural policies of water management, conservation, and the social impacts of climate change. She is the author of River Dialogues, Hindu Faith, and the Political Ecology of Dams on the Sacred Ganga, and has published extensive in peer-reviewed journals. Several bodies, including the Australian Research Council, the National Science Foundation, and the US Department of Education, have supported Dr. Drew's research. From 2025 to 2028, she will serve as a member of the ARC's College of Experts. Today, she brings her expertise to the topic of middle-class consumption and the sustainability development goals in Nepal, investigating the winners and losers of novel technology adaptation. Please join me in welcoming Associate Professor Dr. Drew. Thank you.
I just need to pull up the slides, Dawn. I think I got it. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here today. I want to thank everyone who invited me and who organized my ability to be here with you all. So that includes Duan and Ankit, who had done some of the background organization, and to all the members that are here today, and Acting Member Joe, who I had the pleasure of sitting next to at the table. I also want to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on the lands of the traditional custodians of the Ghana population, and I pay my respects of elders past, present, and emerging. So today what I have organized for you is indeed a talk that shows a range of things that I've been up to over the past few years that are very much focused around a few key themes. I thought I'd give you some personal background to myself, but also my relationship to Rotary, the thanks that I owe to Rotary. And that will springboard how I started working in Nepal, and particularly Kathmandu in particular. And I'm going to give some field insights around some water access and equity issues that are manifesting across the Kathmandu Valley, with a focus on novel technology adoption, particularly looking at the proposed silver bullet solutions of urban rainwater harvesting, which is a sustainable method of harvesting and managing water without needing to extract resources from the rural and Himalayan hinterland. But there are lots of challenges to achieving that, and to achieving that in a way that's done equitably. So with that overview, I first want to say that I do indeed owe a great debt to Rotary. In 2010, I was a Rotary ambassadorial scholar to Kathmandu for about 10 months. I did a full academic year at Tribhuvan University, which is one of the 2 or 3 main universities in Kathmandu Valley. So I do want to say that District 7,710 supported me, and that my local club was Sunrise Rotary Club, which was in the 22,000s. I won't list off the entire number, but I had such a lovely interaction with those Rotarians, both before my departure and in Kathmandu. One of my responsibilities, I had a couple of responsibilities under the banner of Rotary. One was to make sure that I at least spoke at 10 different Rotary clubs and other organizations, but it was mostly Rotary clubs. And I was also committed to volunteering. So across the 10 months, I spent quite a lot of time volunteering at Small Earth Nepal, which was a environmental NGO geared towards building the capacity of environmental leaders in Kathmandu. So towards the end of my time here, you can see some of the members of Small Earth Nepal that I spent a lot of time working with. I'm in those photos somewhere. See if you can find me. Suffice to say that numerous of those people that are pictured have gone on to be some of the most prominent environmental leaders in Kathmandu today, and or to be international academics. So many have gone on to do PhDs in Canada and the United States and elsewhere. I was working on a water-themed topic at the time when I was spending those 10 months in Kathmandu, and I just wanted to point out that across the urban landscape of Kathmandu, you see lots of signs and symbols of Rotary and all the good work that they've been doing to build wells, build toilets, sanitary infrastructure, and Rotary was particularly prominent after the devastating 2015 earthquake that really hit a lot of Nepal, including Kathmandu, and devastated a lot of it. So what was I doing there? For a long time I've been focused on water, so I do the anthropology of water as an environmental anthropologist. And that's done a lot through the banner of development studies and anthropology. Development studies is a very robust field that often seeks to look at where the best policy interventions are to address poverty, resource equity, et cetera. When you add an anthropologist to it, we end up being the pesky little kids in the room saying, but why, but why? And we really challenge the status quo, which is really what I'm going to be doing today. So you'll see a little bit of what the anthropological lens adds and why it might be a little bit of a thorn in the side of development studies in the development industry. But I was there to look at water, and when I finally got my letter through from Trufant University for my affiliation as a researcher there in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, my project was loosely around water sustainability in Nepal, an examination of options, practices, and gender inclusion. So one of the things to say there is this really was a springboard. I'd spent about a year and a half, 2 years living in India prior to my time here. I'd only spent 3 months in Nepal prior to these 10 months there under the banner of Rotary. And I had seen, in those first 3 months, I had seen the impact of people living with polio and people suffering from various diseases that Rotary has been working to eradicate along with other large organizations, the UN, USAID, and the impact on personal lives with reduction of polio was just absolutely significant. But having had this extra 10 months was really life-changing for me, and it really changed the trajectory of my research, including what I went on to do for my postdoc and some of my research here at the University of Adelaide. So I've been fortunate now to work with numerous scholars, PhD scholars who've gone on to do PhDs based in research in Nepal, looking at things like microcredit and women's empowerment in rural Nepal. And I now have 2 PhD students joining me from Nepal to do a PhD at the University of Adelaide under my supervision, looking at gendered technology adaptation to smallholder food diversification. Basically, how can women farm better and get better economic opportunities and household opportunities through gendered technology adoption. So the general background is that Nepal is really struggling. They have something like 2.7 or 3% of the world's freshwater resources, but in the urban core of Kathmandu, you really don't feel that there's a lot of water to be had. So there's a significant number of households within the urban core that are really struggling. A lot of women are still spending 2 to 3 hours, women and or children, struggling to secure the fresh water that they need to maintain their households, for cooking, for cleaning, and for all the other needs of daily life. And the effort to improve this is part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So these were launched in 2015. Really, they kicked off in 2016, and the end date has been 2030. So it was a 15-year timeline horizon. And I think things were looking pretty rosy at the time. And it's through that a lot of projects were launched to address these gaps, particularly on the Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is clean water and sanitation, you see circled here. But it doesn't, unfortunately, seem like, in the case of at least Nepal, the achievement of the goals is going to be reached. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why today. So target goal 6 was by 2030 to achieve universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. And by 2020, which is now 5 years past, to protect and restore water-related ecosystems, including mountains, forests, wetlands, rivers, aquifers, and lakes. But here's the challenge. So Kathmandu is in a kind of a bowl about a mile high in the sky, above sea level. And so it's really limited. There's not a lot of land to go around. It used to be hugely agriculturally intensive. My first 3 months living in Nepal was in 2001. The population was anywhere between 1 and 1.5 million, depending on how you're counting. And as of right now, it's somewhere between 4 and 5 million. It's really hard to know definitively because there's a lot of informal settlements. And that population increases really skyrocketed after the 2015 earthquakes because a lot of people lost homes and therefore lost income and had to go somewhere where daily cash labor was on offer, and that was really only the urban core. So you have a large-scale urban densification. And while it's only 5 million to Delhi's potentially 20 million, Delhi gets to spread out. And so Kathmanduites can't really spread out, which means they're really limited by the groundwater underneath and the fresh water that's available to them. Before a large development project that I'm going to speak about, they really only had access to 130 million liters per day, and the demand for quite a while has been over 400. It sits somewhere between 450 million liters per day and 500 million liters per day. Again, those are official numbers based on official population statistics. But for a really long time, most people have accessed water in a range of ways. So when I've been working on these issues on water access equitability struggles in places like Bangalore, I've talked a lot about patchwork adaptation to water risk and water scarcity, which really means that people, lower income, but even middle class populations, depending on where you live in somewhere like Kathmandu, you're really struggling to secure water from multiple sources. So you might be lucky to have groundwater or a bore water source that you're drawing from. You would still have tanker water deliveries. You would have fresh 20-liter bottled water deliveries, and that you would also still be going to your spring spouts, your Dunge Dara and your Hitti, which several of which are listed in the World Heritage. This one is on the left-hand side is from Patan, which is also itself a World Heritage declared area of Kathmandu Valley. And these have really been running for some over 500 years. They source fresh water that's naturally filtered through an ingenious system that filters water from the surrounding hills down into the plains. And they're really at risk, they're really at risk through all of that urbanization and development. Why? Well, to build new roads, to build new houses, they're drilling down, they're drilling deep, and oftentimes they're cutting off water supplies. So of the 575 or so that they've counted in terms of all these traditional stone spouts that people do rely on daily, only about half are still in operation, and they've lost about 90 to date. And so it's really a crisis issue because of the stopgap that these water sources provide for a lot of people in the city. Of course, you see here images of the 20-liter water deliveries that people are waiting for. As an anthropologist, I try to make sure that people aren't in my photos when I can help it. So this is a well that was in my neighborhood on the right-hand side. That's a tanker water delivery, and there's a well near it that women usually waited between 2 and 3 hours a day, usually in the morning. So you're getting up at 4:30, 5 a.m. to wait for water a couple times a day. So here enters the development solution that various agencies, the United Nations, the Asian Development Bank, and the state of Nepal, the government of Nepal, tried to fix the issues with. And it's very much a tried method. I won't say it's a tried and true method because I've spent a lot of my career debating the large hydroelectric projects and large river water transfer projects from rural Himalayan hinterlands into urban cores, including in Delhi. But we'll just take the instance of Kathmandu here. So the big goal was to design a new project, the Malamchi Water Supply Project, which was going to add 170 million liters a day into this water supply gap, right? So they had about 130, they need 450 to 500, but it was going to get them 170. So they'd be at 300 out of 450 to 500, and things would be a lot easier. However, it took quite a while to deliver, to build. Building in Himalayan scapes is dangerous, it's costly, and there was a lot of corruption. Lots of companies were called, and politicians were called into question for the way that they were channeling the funds. An Italian company was involved at one point, and they were chased out of the country with lots of accusations of corruption and profiteering. And it took quite a lot of time to steer this ship and to get the project finally completed. It was to build a 26-kilometer-long tunnel. Again, you can see the intake zone up on the top left-hand side, going into the urban core of Kathmandu Valley. If you want to look at this later, you can just see that there's lots of controversies in this timeline listed below that I won't get into. But if we're thinking about the Sustainable Development Goals, one of the things was to restore and protect rivers, lakes, and ecologies, wetland ecologies. And so these sorts of projects definitely don't do that. And they also are taking water away from local ecologies, but also local agriculturalists, rural agriculturalists, and also desecrating beauty in the rural hinterland, which is one of Nepal's draws for hikers and trekkers. And then this is what it looks like trying to bring that pipeline into the urban core. It's very disturbing, it's very dusty, it's a very, people are having to work around construction zones for quite a long time. So I have about 20 minutes today. I might take a few minutes over, but what I thought I'd do is I thought I would introduce you to not just the issues, but to what my discipline tries to do. And so some of you might like this, some of you might not, but this is what we do. In my discipline, we like to show grounded insights based on having been there and to set a scene around what things are like on the ground. So I'm going to read from you 2 pages over 2 slides, and then I'll just speak to the rest of the issues. So I'm going to set up the challenges of the debates around the Kathmandu-Malamchi water supply project, and then I'm going to then speak to this alternative of urban rainwater harvesting. So bear with me for about 500 words in 2 slides. Setting the scene here. So it is the middle of May 2019 in a historic part of Kathmandu, not far from the World Heritage declared Durban Square, and a group of men are discussing the long wait for a new supply of water that they hope will alleviate the challenges of living off meager resources flowing to their homes. The supply being discussed is the Malamchi Drinking Water Project, designed to bring, as you've heard, 170 million liters per day into the urban core. The men point out that they have already been waiting nearly 25 years for the project to come to fruition, and someone quips that it may only quench the city's thirst, quote unquote, after we die, right? They'll never see it. When asked about the completion timeline. In the meantime, low-income residents, most of whom ethnically identify as Nawari in their particular enclave, supplement the pipe supplies from spring spouts, wells, and rainwater buckets, from tanker water purchased from private vendors driving large trucks through small laneways at high prices, and from 20-liter jugs used solely for drinking water. The wait for Malamchi, as the project is often called, feels especially interminable because many households in the neighborhood had to pay thousands of rupees in back fees for pipe water that they never received in full just to be eligible to receive Malamchi water once it is in operation. In some instances, the amounts requested by the municipality were equivalent to what a family earns in 1 or 2 months of an entire year. Speaking to this, one of the men raises his voice to me to share his indignation. So this is a quote. This Malamchi project and the Drinking Water Corporation is run by thieves who are stealing and robbing our wealth. We farmers and honest Nawars who are innocent are told that Malamchi water is going to come. You pay your dues now. Until you pay your dues, we're not going to provide you with the Malamchi pipeline connection, they tell us. By saying so, they convinced us to pay the overdue bills that people from here were not paying since the last few years, as there was no water coming from the pipeline. People paid their dues to cover the last 25 to 20 years. So that's the end of the quote. The lack of mains water, which the residents retroactively paid for despite the service failure, was in reference to a broken pipe infrastructure that was eventually fixed after long delays. So I'd seen the repairs underway in 2017, and the good news of the visit 2 years later in 2019 was that the pipes were now working. Yay. But the bad news was that they only received 2 to 3 hours of water once a week, and the cost of procuring water supplies, private water supplies, those additional water supplies, had gone up, which added to the pocketbook pain of paying back the fees. So in many of these enclaves, people are low income and middle income, but they're spending about 15 to 20% of their household income on just fresh water for the house. So fast forward to, now we get to change slides, fast forward to April 2021, another 2-year jump, and the media is abuzz with celebrations of the now finalized Malamchi water supply system. In images shared across news platforms and social media, the president of Nepal at the time, Bidya Devi Bhandari, received applause as she revealed a placard marking the opening of a newly functional fountain, or stone spout, that symbolically represented the completion of the Malamchi drinking water project. It was an important moment for the Nepali government as year on year, politicians had assured struggling residents that their water woes would be abated once the new system was finalized. As project cost balloons, reaching roughly 800 million USD, it was really $1 billion, but I'm just being safe here, and involving the 26 kilometers of tunnels and pipes laid through the winding mountain landscapes that I mentioned earlier, stories of corruption and mismanagement circulated that exacerbated the kind of anger captured by the man quoted earlier. The residents that retained hope for the project to meet its high expectations, despite the stories of mismanagement and financial improprieties, invested in usually and costly user-pays water connections to the pipes laid specifically for the project. The user-pays policy is critical to note. Malamchi is a full cost recovery project based on revenues from tariffs. We've heard a lot about tariffs lately. This model is seen as a way to increase financial sustainability and reduce government subsidies. The approach aligns with Nepal's 2002 water resources strategy, as well as the 2002 to 2027 National Water Plan, both of which state that supply costs should be recovered from water users. Rumors swirled during fieldwork that there was talk of eventual privatization, which presents another fiscal risk given the price escalations that privatization often allows. And we've seen high-profile cases of that around the world, including in Cochabamba, Bolivia. So last paragraph. Those waiting for the new pipelines to function as intended experience firsthand what some call the static paralysis state resulting from the government's low ability to change the status quo. Such criticisms were echoed across the project's completion because extreme weather events required major repairs in the first 2 years of operation, and catastrophic flooding caused extended month-long service delivery disruptions, the first of which struck within weeks, within, I think, less than a month of this inauguration, causing the new pipe to once again sit again idle and dry. Yet, the main solutions offered by the state still involve little more than the continual repair and maintenance of a mega project that may be fighting against the actual floodwaters of a rapidly rising climate. This raises a question. If we cannot count on Himalayan mega projects like Malamchi to deliver it as intended long term, what avenues are there to think about and to act beyond it? To think and act beyond it. An examination of Malamchi, as I'm talking about here, is needed to explore this query alongside the sociocultural perceptions of the decentralized alternatives that could offer a counterbalance and a point of resilience. The central argument here is straightforward. It is time to rethink the costly and increasingly inefficient Himalayan megaproject. So I'll stop reading now. But the point being that they built it, $1 billion, people paying tons of back fees, 25-year wait. And even as of today, every monsoon, the project is completely inoperable because it's just too much water. And the system can't handle all the floodwaters. So right now, for a good portion of the year, Kathmandu is still reliant on 130 million liters per day. And there's really no end zone in sight, except from the government's plans to build new interbasin transfers and new mega projects from different upriver streams and sources that they want to channel down. And this is the big problem, because if you're a politician wanting to win votes, you tell people that you're going to do a big project to tell them that you can transform their lives, and that gets the votes, and that also allows you to get large investment. But if you tell people you're going to help them with decentralized solutions, from the politician's perspective, you can't really raise a lot of international funding for that. But then also, if you're successful, there's no big grand gesture, no big inauguration to show. But there is a solution, and it's urban rainwater harvesting. So Kathmandu gets something between 1,300 and 1,600 millimeters per year of rainwater, which is quite a lot. Adelaide is around 520, sometimes 600 if we're lucky. New Delhi is, probably not this year. New Delhi is between 600 and 800, depending on the year. They had, I think, 1,000 milliliters last year. The Center for Science and Environment in 2003, what got me started on thinking about urban rainwater harvesting, there was only 10 million people officially in Delhi at the time, and I was reading this in 2004 when I spent my first year living in Delhi. They determined that with Delhi's large sizable footprint and the millimeters they receive per year, that if every raindrop was caught, all water from within New Delhi could be sourced for residential use, fulfilling all demand for 10 million people. So the capacity is huge. Uptake is an issue. So when I was doing this research between 2017 and 2019, funded by the Australian Research Council, I had a Discovery Early Career Researcher Award. And I was looking in Kathmandu, in Delhi, in Bangalore, in Chennai, and in Kochi, Kerala. So 5 different cities looking at the prospects of urban rainwater harvesting. And I'm just sharing one insight from Kathmandu, one field site here. But in 2017, 2019, one of the problems were that there were multiple private companies, Best Pani, Smart Pani, a few others, trying to get people to buy into urban rainwater harvesting, to immediately fix their water supply gaps by catching water that falls on the rooftop or in the courtyards. The wait for Malamchi did a lot of damage, because people said, we're having to pay for our back fees and pipes. Why pay more money for water management now, because when Malamchi comes, it will finally fix everything. So they decided to wait. and that waiting proved difficult. But on the right, not a good bet. On the right-hand side, you see this is the headquarters of Smart Pawnee. They've got little model displays talking about how urban rainwater harvesting works. And most low-income residents of Kathmandu know what urban rainwater harvesting can do quite well. And I'll just take 2 more minutes of your time, and then I'll wrap it up. But I'm just going to give you a few insights into what it can do and what it can't do. So you see very low-income patchwork kind of MacGyver-like efforts to capture rainwater where they can, just to fulfill that supply gap. So this wouldn't be potable water here. This would be for washing dishes, probably. In some instances, maybe if they felt the water was clean enough or they were desperate enough to wash clothes. In this, you can see on the right-hand side, one of the ways they filter it is putting it through mesh fabric, sometimes old saris. I've seen that in a lot of rural parts of India, using old saris folded up maybe 100 times, and then the water goes through that and it becomes a bit of a filter. Here's another shot from, this is from the neighborhood where the men were living that I was speaking of earlier. This is someone inviting me up on the rooftop. You can see they're just collecting water wherever they possibly can. But there are large institutional ways of doing this as well. So on the left-hand side is an NGO that when they built the building, they built it from the ground up, ready to harvest rainwater. And so a lot of their household capacity to supply water for residents is almost completely independent on just nearby wells and the rain that they catch, because they have a large enough rooftop space in order to capture and manage that water. And then I spent a lot of time, this is my colleague, Ranjini Mahajan, who's now doing a PhD at the University of Florida. She was helping me during the time with this research. And then you have middle to upper class, actually more upper class users, who have moved off the grid. They've bought land in new zones and settlements that the government basically has no infrastructure that they're actually providing, especially not water, which isn't a problem because you're basically buying and then you're able to design your water supply from the ground up. And so in these areas, the water supply providers, these private industries trying to get people to do urban rainwater harvesting are stepping in, and the uptake is actually quite impressive. And the people that I interviewed in these areas were happy as can be with the ability to manage their water themselves, to be able to take out pollutants, to be able to test their water, and to not be beholden to the government's supply quandaries and to the mismanagement and corruption that the centralized pipe system implies. But you can see on the right-hand side, this is the same house. That's the left-hand side, that's the roof. So the water is being caught, you basically walk through the courtyard, your feet are on top of your water harvesting system while you're going to capture your laundry, or the kids are playing on the rooftop for whatever reason, and that's going down to the ground floor, but you're then filtering it. You've got a drip system, then several filtration systems. But I drank water in this home. It tasted soft and sweet. And the owner couldn't have been, as I said earlier, happier. So this is a shot of another development going up that's almost completely independent from the water woes of Greater Kathmandu. This is just outside the urban core, so these are newly established areas. And that house going up on the right-hand side is also going to be 100% water independent and water sovereign, all through the power of urban rainwater harvesting. So great for them. But this only solves the problem for the well-to-do and the wealthy in places like Kathmandu. I see that my time is over, and I really just wanted to leave you with these challenges, that there are efforts to address sustainable development goals through large development infrastructural projects. They're failing. There are also options and alternatives, but they need to be upscaled, and they need to be rolled out in a way where more people benefit. And the best way to do it is to do stormwater recharge systems that would refill aquifers or refill groundwater. But a lot of the organizations that I was working with that are involved in the rainwater harvesting industry for profit really saw the most hope in all of the schools, all the hospitals, all of the institutions with large landscape, real estate footprints, contributing to the solutions by using that space to recharge water underneath their local systems and infrastructures, which then percolates to nearby systems. So you still need to think large for these decentralized systems. Otherwise, to think small really only helps the people who've installed it on their own little rooftop. I'll leave it there. I'll open to questions if there's any available, but I have spoken for a while, so I will also cede the floor if need be. Thank you. This is me exchanging my Sunrise Rotary flag banner with one of the clubs in Kathmandu. Yes.
Thank you very much, Georgina, and it was a delight to hear the speech and also a delight to hear about your connections with Rotary.
Oh, thank you.
With regard to the rainwater collection, what are the issues with mosquitoes?
It's not as big an issue as you would imagine. There's already quite a lot of standing water in Kathmandu, and it's actually getting worse due to urbanization because there's not a lot of places for the water to percolate. So actually, if we can think historically, the whole valley used to be, the whole system used to be urban rainwater harvesting through the agricultural fields. Particularly, it used to be a large area for rice cultivation. So a lot of that allowed for water recharge. So the problem is, as we've built up, the concrete doesn't allow the water to percolate, so there's lots more standing water. So the issues with mosquitoes, it's kind of moot because there's actually ways to manage it, but also there's just so many other standing water sources that are competing to host those same mosquitoes. Yeah. Thank you.
Next question.
Are we done? Great, thank you.
Well, before you go, thank you for such a fascinating talk. That was beautiful. So today the clubs raise money through our donation bowls, and your presentation has made that happen. So all that goes to our Rotary community projects. So on behalf of the club, I'd like to present you with our Rotary banner, Adelaide Rotary banner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our Rotarians, I'd invite you. Yeah, thank you.